Okay, so got to get ourselves ready for this St. Louis NLCS. St. Louis Giants. It's gonna be a tough one. I have no illusions about this being a fast series. I don't know if I would want it to be a fast series. We saw last year, or the last time we were in the playoffs, I should say, that if a team finishes their series too quickly, they can lose momentum, as Detroit did in the 2012 World Series. So maybe we want this series to go 6 or 7 games, and I don't know. It's tempting to want it to just be over faster, but certainly we don't want it to go 6 or 7 games. Really, I mean, 5 games would probably be about the most I'd want to see it go. I'd really like to see us win it. 4-1 would be nice, but doubtful. I'd say if we are going to win, it'll be more like 4-2 or 4-3, most likely. Which is tough, because I don't want to have to be, sitting on the edge of my seat again. I think we can win. I've been looking at people's predictions, and it does seem like there's a lot of disagreement. There are some people who think, the Cardinals. I mean, the Cardinals. I really don't want to see them go back. If this becomes St. Louis in the World Series versus either Kansas City or the Orioles, I'm not going to watch the World Series. I cannot stand the Cardinals being in the World Series again. I know it's kind of hypocritical given that I'm sure a lot of people are tired of seeing the Giants in the World Series. But, the Cardinals have just had too much success for too long. That's because they're a well-run organization, but I don't care much for the middle of the country, especially St. Louis, so I'm hoping that they fail miserably. Anyway, that's not to say I actually went to St. Louis and met some very nice people there. There's nothing wrong with St. Louis, but their baseball team has had far too much success. I think they need a dose of losing every now and again, and hopefully we'll be the ones to provide it to them. As far as the potential opponent goes in the World Series, if we do manage to get past St. Louis, I think I'm going to hope that it's going to be the Royals. I'm not sure. I mean, never liked Baltimore particularly. The Royals, they got the blue and white, nice colors, and you look at the Royals team, they swept us this year, which is definitely scary, and their bullpen is as locked down as it gets. But the Orioles bullpen is also very locked down, and I think the Orioles actually have better pitchers than the Royals do. I don't know, it's a tough one. You got Shields and Duffy, I think, are the top two Royals pitchers versus Tillman and Chen, who are kind of eh. But the Orioles lineup certainly is scarier by the regular season stats. But then again, it's hard to want either of those teams in the American League because they've both been so hot lately. The Royals have looked like a much better team than they were during the regular season so far in the postseason. And the Orioles seem to have a lot of comeback vigor in them, which is kind of scary because, you never know if our bullpen's going to be totally locked down. But I don't know. It doesn't really matter that much, I guess. It's exciting first game, though, for the Royals and Orioles. It was a pretty thrilling win. Based on regular season stats, we'd certainly rather see the Royals, but also based on the regular season's performance, we got swept by the Royals, so who knows? I guess we won't think about that because the Cardinals are the task at hand right now. And I think we've got a good shot at beating the Cardinals, but I think a lot of it is going to depend on how the hitting does, and I think the most of it, more than anything, is going to depend on how injured is Wainwright. That is the real key here, because he looked terrible against the Dodgers, and he's usually a force against the Giants. I was actually shocked when we blew him out earlier this year, and that was at a time when he was supposedly healthy. He wasn't really having as many shoulder issues earlier in the year, so it's kind of like Remember when we did blow them out earlier in the year, which was a great game because at that point we seemed like a juggernaut that was unstoppable. At that point during the year, I thought we were going to have at least a 600 winning percentage. We were going to win 100 games. We looked like an unstoppable force. Adam Wainwright was calling our lineup a murderer's row. It couldn't get any better than that as a Giants fan. Unfortunately, it all went straight to hell about, I don't know, a few weeks later. And we all know how that went. But luckily, we are now out of hell and hopefully on the pathway to heaven. So yeah, but remember, when we beat Wainwright early on the season, we did have Pagan healthy, and the lineup was sort of running on all cylinders. I think at that point, I don't know if we had Belt at that point, if Belt had gotten injured already by then. I think Belt had already gotten injured at that point. I know he didn't contribute much in that series, but Morse was killing it. And I think that's another one of the big keys. We got Wainwright's health. It's going to play a big part, and we have Morse's contribution. So as far as Wainwright's health is concerned, I think if he is healthier than he looked in Game 1, if he gets his cutter working and his curveball is working, then we're going to be in for it in his starts. Because when he is good, he owns the Giants. Usually. Except for that game earlier in the year. And like I said, we don't have Pagan, so I think, I don't think there'll be much of a chance of us blowing him out the way we did earlier in the year, unless he's injured. Because I think with a healthy Wainwright is not going to struggle against the Giants with Gregor Blanco in the leadoff role. Time and time again, I'm not going to stop saying this. And with Blanco in the leadoff spot, we have not been as effective scoring runs, and it's just, it's the same story over and over again. Certainly, I think, if Bochy was willing to experiment a little, we could probably do better. I still think that, Panic could potentially be a leadoff hitter. Or we could try Gary Brown in place of Blanco, but it looks like Gary Brown isn't going to make this roster, and that's kind of disappointing to me. I would rather see Gary Brown on the roster than Juan Perez, even still. Because at this point, Juan Perez has proven that all he is a defensive replacement. And I think Brown can do the same job defensively that Juan Perez would do and provide more speed on the base paths than Juan Perez does. And, Juan Perez doesn't have much major league experience anyway. It's not like he's some veteran we're putting out there who we can rely on to get the job done. So, they're going to go with Juan Perez because he has a little bit more major league experience. But personally, I would not have Juan Perez on the NLCS roster. I think he's a waste of space as far as the being a contributor to the Giants is concerned. But whatever, it is what it is. They're going to drop Gary Brown. Juan Perez is going to make it. I'm not happy about it, but I guess we got to live with it. At least we'll have a guy who can throw out runners in the outfield, and, he's definitely decent as a defender, but I'd still rather see Gary Brown. And, just for the sake of giving us another leadoff option, because really without Gary Brown on the roster, all we've got is Blanco on the leadoff spot, unless we make Panic the leadoff hitter, and I think Bochy has not shown any inclination to do that whatsoever, so yeah, it's disappointing if you ask me. Runs are going to be hard to come by yet again, I think. But, I can't see them scoring a lot of runs in this series because, they have scored a lot of runs with Blanco in the leadoff spot, but it definitely isn't a common occurrence. It's not like they string together 3 games in a row where they score 8 runs with Blanco. They might have one game where they score 8 runs, like they did in the Pittsburgh wildcard game. But, notice in that game, Blanco had very little to do with those runs being scored. So if they do score a lot of runs, it's because the rest of the lineup performs, not because Blanco performs. So, not that I have a problem with Blanco. He's been a great part of the team, and I wouldn't mind seeing him bat lower in the order. I think he'd be a great number 8 hitter, number 7 hitter. But it's really not cutting it with him as the leadoff hitter, and I expect that to continue. Again, though, since he will be the leadoff hitter, in all likelihood, We need to see him get a hit and a walk, and that's pretty much all we can expect out of him. Any more than that, icing on the cake. So, let's see here. We may as well get into the... So yeah, the other thing, Mike Morse, before I move on. Mike Morse, I'm hoping he starts in left field. I would much rather see him start in left field than Ishikawa. I know that Ishikawa is probably better defensively than Mike Morse. The more I think about it, he just seems more limber. Mike Morse is proven to be bad, while Ishikawa has been proven to be inexperienced, but not particularly bad. He's done pretty well in left field. I'm hoping Mike Morse gets a shot because our lineup is a lot more formidable with Mike Morse in it. We can stomach the presence of Gregor Blanco a little bit better when you think about the lineup. From 1 through sorry, I have to plug in there, running out of battery. If you think about the lineup 1 through 8, you've got Ishikawa in the 8th spot without Morse in there, but think about the lineup with Morse in there. You got Blanco, Panic, Posey, hopefully Pence. Like I said, I want Pence in the cleanup spot for the purpose of breaking up double plays. And because Pablo has been pretty inconsistent as far as driving in runs, especially this year. So Pence, Pablo, then you go either Belt or Morse, probably Belt, Morse. You got Morse hitting 7th. I like Morse hitting 7th a lot more than Ishikawa hitting 8th. And then Crawford's your 8-hitter. And Crawford's proven to be a consistently good, does a consistently good job producing in the 8th spot. So that's a lineup that, aside from Blanco, is scary all the way through, especially if Morse is hitting anything like he did earlier in the season. And, they're talking about how, well, Morse isn't going to have a great swing because he's been out for a while. I'm not so sure this whole catching up, thing is really that. You see guys in spring training who are on a tear as soon as they get in, So this whole talk about, he hasn't faced major league pitching in such a time. These guys have been playing for years and years. They've seen plenty of major league pitching. It's not like, going away for a month and then coming back is going to make them, take 2 weeks to start seeing pitching again. He saw pitching in the Arizona League. I think you're either hot or you're not, and I think it has that much to do with how much pitching you've seen. I understand if it was like they'd been out for half a year or, a year or something like that, but a month, Morse is going to, if Morse is hot when he comes back, he'll be hot regardless of the time he spent off. So, I think he's seen enough with batting practice. He's going to be a better hitter than Ishikawa. Defensive-wise, he is a liability, there's no doubt. But, we can always shuffle things around. I wouldn't mind seeing Belt and left and Morse at first either, but I know then we lose the defensive Belt at first, and he is pretty much a plus defender, so we don't really want that. So I think it makes the most sense to start Morse in left and replace him later in the game. Probably, unfortunately, with Juan Perez, but we do what we have to do. Maybe we can replace him with Ishikawa late in the game, even. I don't know. But it'll make it'll give us another chance to win if Morse can get through. And I remember in that game where they did hit Wainwright hard earlier in the year, Morse was a big contributor in that game. He was actually batting in the cleanup spot at that point. I'm not saying we should bet him in the cleanup spot now because definitely needs to get some of the rust off, but certainly taking a shot at Morse as the number 7 hitter until at least the 6th or 7th inning, where we can replace him defensively, I think is enough to give us a little more of a jolt offensively. And that's what we need right now. In case you don't remember, we did not hit at all against the Nationals. And that's going to need to change. The only way I see that changing is by putting some fresh blood in the lineup, and that is going to mean Morse should get the start in left. And I do believe it or not, I think that Bochy is going to give him the start in left, because I think Bochy knows how bad the team was hitting in the previous series, and I think he knows we need a little extra boost. And who knows, maybe the time off for Morse. I mean, he was having some health issues earlier in the year. Maybe he needs the time off. And now that he's gotten it, he'll be a little more relaxed. He'll feel re-energized. Maybe this oblique thing was an issue for a while, and that was part of what was sapping his power. You don't know. Certainly, he's had a lot of time to recover any dings and any sort of aches and pains he's been having. So I hope for some kind of decent contribution out of Morrison. I hope he's in the starting lineup. But I've hoped for different things in the previous series. Bochy went his own way on that. As far as I'm concerned, I was still right. I think we got lucky in the previous series, and we would have done better with experimenting a little more. But whatever, we'll see what happens. Even with Morse coming off the bench, it's a big boost to our offense, and I think he's going to play a role in this series at some point. But those are the X factors. Wainwright, how injured is he? And Morse, how much of a contribution are we going to get out of him? Otherwise, I think we're very well matched. Our bullpen is better than their bullpen. I think that's pretty much a pretty large discrepancy there. They have a lot of guys who throw very hard, but haven't had the greatest results as far as numbers are concerned. And our guys are battle-tested. I think their guys are mostly younger and really haven't been that great in the postseason. Other than Michael Wacha, he's been pretty good. Rosenthal has looked very shaky. I will not be completely afraid to go up against him. We haven't had great success against Rosenthal in the past, but he hasn't shown himself to be a lockdown closer. I feel better about having Casilla in the ninth inning than I would about having Rosenthal if I was a Cardinal fan. And then you got a guy like, I don't know, they just look at their numbers, they're not particularly impressive. Wacha and Petit, I don't know, I guess pure talent-wise, Wacha's definitely probably got the advantage, but Petit has looked certainly like a world beater in the postseason, so that's good. Rotation-wise, I think people are giving the edge to the Cardinals, but I'm not that impressed with Lance Lynn. His control has always been somewhat questionable, and he hasn't really come up big in big games in the postseason in the past. He's always been kind of shaky. Lackey's numbers during the regular season were kind of very he definitely took a tumble from his previous season in Boston, but Lackey has shown himself to be pretty competent in the playoffs, so I definitely expect him to have a decent game. And then you've got who is the other guy going for them? I'm trying to think. I don't know who the other. Let's see who the other St. Louis staff guys is going to be. I can't really tell who their fourth starter is going to be because I know you got. Let's see. We'll scroll down to it here. So it looks like Shelby Miller. That's right. And he's he's talented, no doubt about it. He's given us fits before. So yeah, with Wainwright and Shelby Miller, depending on how healthy Wainwright is, and Lackey, it's gonna be tough. There's no doubt about it. I'm the most afraid. I'm not that afraid of Lance Lynn, like I say. We've managed to beat him a bunch in the past, but I am afraid of Wainwright if he's healthy, and I am afraid of Shelby Miller because he's been good against us. Lackey, I think I feel like he could be somewhat effective, but his regular season stats were really not that pretty this year, and he is getting up there a bit. So he's 35 now. That means he does have a lot of. People were saying that about Peavy and Hudson for us, saying that they were too old in the series against the Nationals, and they pitched just fine. So probably it's gonna be a challenge, and certainly I don't expect necessarily any kind of the same performance from Hudson as he pitched against the Nationals, and Peavy is kind of a crapshoot given his poor postseason history in the past, except for, of course, that game against the Nationals where he just totally killed it. Hopefully that's the PV we get in this series. Bumgarner, I expect to do pretty well. He usually does really well, more or less well in the postseason, although I did notice from looking at his stats that he tends to pitch even better in World Series than he does in the series leading up to the World Series. So we're going to need him to be good because we're going to be looking for 2 at least half-decent performances out of him in this series. But yeah, as far as the bullpen is concerned, I'm not really afraid of Carlos Martinez. As fast as he throws, he's wild, and he does give up a lot of hits. Not really that afraid of Seth Maness, although he has kind of owned us, and he doesn't walk a lot of guys, so maybe I should be afraid of him a little bit. Neshek definitely scares me a little. He's been effective against us this year. His stats were great. Randy Choate, I think, has been pretty decent. Yeah, and you got Sam Freeman, so yeah, it's but our bullpen is better, I think, and I think that'll be a big factor. If we're gonna win, we're gonna need to rely on our bullpen to continue to be as great as they have been in recent postseasons. So, and the other thing we've got to think about is Matt Carpenter. That guy is definitely going to be, he's another one of these guys. It's usually a thorn in our sides, just like Rendon was in the last one. Carpenter has generally screwed us over many times. I can remember many times in previous years, even before he became a regular, where as a pinch hitter or as a part-time guy, he would come in and beat the hell out of us, and I couldn't stand it before I realized that he was good enough to be a starter, and then it was kind of like, well, okay, now I get it. This guy really is a good hitter. You look at his stats from the regular season, they weren't all that impressive, but this guy is a gamer. He comes to play, and he's going to be a factor. There's no doubt. I think he's going to be tough to get out. I think he's going to be a royal pain in the ass, and hopefully we can find a way to neutralize him. As far as other hitters to watch out for, Yadier Molina is always pretty decent. But you look at the Cardinal lineup, and really it's not that scary. I think Matt Adams definitely might be starting to feel a little bit, and even though he didn't hit a lot of home runs this year, this guy has got major home run power. If you look at the previous year, he was hitting a home run, and his home run per at-bat rate was pretty decent, so I do expect him to be dangerous. I think he's the guy who scares me the most other than Carpenter in their lineup, so we got to be careful for Matt Adams. I'm not too afraid of Colton Wong. I'm a little afraid of Johnny Peralta, but he hasn't had great numbers against our pitchers. Matt Holliday is going to be a force, but he's not what he used to be. I had him on my fantasy team this year. He's usually pretty consistent. He's always a threat. So definitely not to be discounted. But I think the ones that we really got to watch out for are going to be Matt Adams and Carpenter. All right. So that's the first part of the preview. Oh, as far as the Giants are concerned, I expect more performance out of Posey. I expect Panic to continue to do well. I'd like to see more out of Pence. Hopefully, he really becomes a factor. I think he usually hits against the Cardinals pretty well, so I expect him to start breaking out a little bit. I don't know what to expect out of Sandoval. I really have no idea what he's going to do. I don't expect much out of Blanco. I don't expect much out of Ishikawa, really. I don't expect a lot out of Morse, but I'd like to see something out of him, definitely. Crawford, I think, is not going to... I don't think he could possibly continue to do as well as he's been doing, because he's sort of been, I think, playing over his head a little bit. But, I don't know, I could be wrong. Belt, I don't expect him to do great, because it seems to me like in that last game looked like the beginning of a slump to me. And I hate to say that. I'd love to see Belt do something good in this series, but I think he's not the greatest against Wainwright, so we're going to see at least a couple of games where he struggles unless Wainwright is not feeling it. All right, so it's time to look at the matchups. And here we go. Well, Madison Bumgarner, you know. First of all, let's take a look at the pitchers. Madison Bumgarner against the St. Louis Cardinals in the past has a 3.97 ERA. That's not great for him. 4.67 strikeouts to walk. That is great. Averages 8.3 strikeouts, so he strikes guys out, and he has a good whip. So it's kind of like, well, what's the problem? I think the problem has pretty much been home runs. He's given up 4 home runs in 45 innings. So that works out to about almost a home run per 9. So which means we got to watch out for Matt Adams, especially. Probably Matt Carpenter. We got to watch out for both those guys. You know, it's I don't know. It seems like he gives up a decent number of hits, but nothing too crazy. I guess that that they've hit him pretty well. So pretty good record against the Cardinals. Nothing too terrible. I think they pretty much owned him in 2012. I looked back and they hit him pretty damn well in the 2012 series. So that's a little concerning, but I think they had I noticed that in the 2012 series it was Carlos Beltran and David Freese who hit home runs against him in the previous game where they blew him out in 2012. So both those guys aren't on the Cardinals anymore, which means maybe he can control the rest of this team. We'll see. And as for Wainwright against the Giants, well, historically he's been pretty good. 3.11 ERA. 1.195 whip, 3.24 strikeouts per walk's pretty good. He's actually also given up quite a few hits, though, 73 hits in 75 innings. So you really look at their stats and you think, other than the ERA, which favors Wainwright, they're actually about the same level of skill against the opposing team. So really, I think it's kind of a wash with those two. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Bumgarner win one of their matchups and Wainwright win the other matchup. Now, that is if they're both at full strength. And we know that Bumgarner is pretty much at full strength, but if Wainwright is just sort of trying to, if he ends up having to go out early in the game, or if his pitches aren't, they're talking about his cutter, saying his cutter's got to cut, and if his cutter doesn't cut, or has lower velocity, then I think we could jump on Wainwright, and it could be like earlier this year, even with Blanco in the leadoff spot, because I think Belt will be able to hit him if he can't get movement on his cutter, and Morris I think might take him out. I think Pence could take him out. Posey. So a lot of this series I think in general is gonna depend on Wainwright's effectiveness. So, that being said, let's move on to the batter versus pitcher matchups. So, against Madison Bumgarner, you got Matt Carpenter 3 for 5 with 2 doubles. That is definitely scary. And a walk. Excuse me. So, yeah, Matt Carpenter, again, he's going to be a force. He always is against us. I hate Matt Carpenter, but he's good. John Jay, 5 for 11, 455 with a couple steals. I think they're going to have a hard time running on Bumgarner, though. I mean, John Jay is pretty much the only serious steal threat in their lineup. And Bumgarner's gotten, his move to first has gotten very good. I've seen Bumgarner pick off a few guys this year. And so if John Jay tries anything, he better be careful, because Bumgarner is no slouch now at picking off runners. Like most left-handers, he's pretty good, and he's really, I think, developed a pretty deceptive move. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw somebody get picked off first in this series, while John Jay really being the only person I would think would even try it. Or maybe Borgios. Could see him get on base at some point, or be a pinch runner, probably more likely, because he doesn't hit much. So yeah, Jay though he's gonna play, and he's done pretty well, but against Bumgarner, probably not too much of a stolen base threat though, because the Cardinals don't have a lot of stolen bases on the year. Let's see how many steals John Jay had. Oh, actually Wong is their top steal guy. John Jay only stole 6 bases this year, huh? I guess we got to worry the most about Wong. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Wong get picked off. So that's good. We don't have to worry about that so much. Let's see. All right. So Randall Grichuk. This guy doesn't really strike me as being that great. I think he's been good in the minors. I think he's still probably a year or two away from being a contributor at the major league level. He did hit a home run against Kershaw, so he obviously has some power. But I don't think he's going to be a huge factor in this thing. I could be wrong. I don't know much about him. Molina, 4 for 14. You know, he's always been a good hitter in the past, but he hasn't seemed to hurt us too much. He could be a factor. Peralta, 1 for 9 with a home run. His only hit was a home run. Peralta's always a threat to go deep. He's got a lot of power for a shortstop. But defensively, he is a liability. He is, at least in the past, he's been a liability. So that could work to our favor. Matt Holliday, 2 for 16. That is very good. You know, Matt Holliday is usually a threat, and in this game, it looks like he may not necessarily be. So, we're seeing a trend here where, you know, some of the middle of the order guys, Peralta, Holliday, not the greatest against Bumgarner. That's good. It means maybe there'll be runners on base, but they may not be able to get in. Cosmo for 2 doesn't matter. Descalso 1 for 7. We're probably not going to see much of him. Mark Ellis, 2 for 22. He's terrible. We really shouldn't see him if Matheny knows what he's doing. That's something I forgot to mention. Yeah, Bochy, Matheny. Bochy clearly has the decided advantage there. I remember Matheny making some questionable calls in the previous series. He has got another year of experience on him, so maybe he gets a little better at that. But I fully expect Bochy to outmanage Matheny in this one, which is, I think, a big advantage to the Giants in this series. Oscar Taveras, 0 for 3. He's really been underwhelming. I'm actually surprised Oscar Taveras hasn't done more so far in the majors, given how highly he was touted. But so far, he hasn't really proven to be someone to be particularly worried about yet. And then Matt Adams, 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts. Not much there, but hey, 2 strikeouts and 3 at-bats is somewhat encouraging. Of course, he did just go deep on Clayton Kershaw, but seems as if the Cardinals don't have a major problem with Clayton Kershaw in the playoffs. So overall, very encouraging. Really just, you know, we got to watch out for Carpenter, and we got to watch out for John Jay. And aside from that, you know, maybe try not to give up a home run to Peralta, and we got a good shot at winning this game as far as Madison Bumgarner looks to do a pretty good job. I expect a good start out of him. I'm thinking at least 7 innings. No more than 3 runs, and hopefully that'll be enough for us to win. And like I said, a lot of that'll depend on Wainwright. Let's take a look at Wainwright. This is probably, you know, these stats are more like the healthy Wainwright, so hopefully these will be skewed towards the Giants' favor if he's unhealthy. Panic 2 for 3. So that's pretty impressive. The kid sees one of the better pitchers in the league pretty well. Let's hope that continues. Let's see. It's too bad we don't have Pagan, and part of the reason why we blew them out. He hit 444 against them, 8 for 18. It's a shame we don't have Pagan. So, well, that's that. I'm never gonna. I know I keep saying that there's no reason to talk about Pagan, but I just, you know, I still wish we had him. I really do. It was so nice when we had Pagan leading off. Michael Morse, 4 for 14, 286 with a home run. So there you go. Already that looks like better stats to me than Ishikawa, which we'll get to. Let's just jump right down there. Ishikawa 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts. 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts. And you're going to tell me that Bochy's going to think about starting Ishikawa? I don't see it, people. I really don't. I think it would be pure craziness. So yeah, based on that alone, I get the feeling that Bochy will be tempted to start Morse, and I believe it would be the right decision. Let's move on. Hunter Pence, 14 for 51, 275 with 2 homers, 12 strikeouts, 4 RBI, a couple of steals. So yeah, Hunter Pence, I expect him to make a contribution in this game. Maybe not hit a home run. 2 home runs and 51 at bats is not particularly overwhelming, but I think he will at least get on base and wreak a little bit of havoc. He might steal a base or at least make Wainwright nervous. Sandoval, 6 for 18, 333. Pretty good. No power. In fact, all of his hits were singles, not a single double. A couple of RBI. Only 3 strikeouts. I guess we'll probably see Sandoval maybe get a clutch single at some point. That's about the best we can expect. Double would be nice, but I think we only see Sandoval do something big if Wainwright is hurting more than he's willing to admit. Belt, 2 for 11, not so good. 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, 182. Not too much, not too many at-bats, but I'm not expecting a lot out of Belt for the first game. Let's see. Arias, 2 for 6, not bad. Crawford, 4 for 18, 222. Again, I wasn't expecting as much out of Crawford in this series, and that seems to confirm that a little bit. Here's the worst part of it. Buster, 2 for 11, 1 RBI, 182. Yeesh. Doesn't make you feel too good. So, I don't know. They could think about batting Pablo third, maybe Buster cleanup, or maybe Pence cleanup, Buster fifth. Probably not going to do that again because Bochy doesn't like to mess around like that usually. But it hurts that Posey doesn't have a great record against Wainwright. That means that we better hope that Wainwright doesn't pitch very well due to injury because it's going to be tough when we got to rely. And it's hard. We haven't had a lot of success when we rely on Pence and Sandoval in the middle of the order. It seems like you need Posey to do something in order for us to really challenge. But I don't know. We don't need everybody all the time. You never know. Hopefully, Wainwright has to exit early, and Posey can be more of a factor there. And Blanco, this is one of the worst. 3 for 17. Yeesh. 2 strikeouts, 176 average. Has walked once against him. That is not pretty. That's 17 at bats also. So again, if I had my way, we'd see Gary Brown out there instead. Game 1. As crazy as that seems, but this is a bad track record, and only further proves to me. And Wainwright's always had great control. You look at his regular season stats, and you're talking like this year, 2 walks per 9. That's pretty good. 1.3 walks per 9 before that. He's consistently in the 2s. So we're not going to get a lot of free passes, which means that the effectiveness of Blanco with his terrible history against Wainwright probably means that we can't expect a lot out of Blanco in general for this game, which is highly disappointing. But so if it was my way again, I wouldn't lead Blanco off, but they're going to lead Blanco off, so I guess we just got to take it and watch him fail, and he probably will fail as our leadoff hitter. Unless Wainwright is not feeling up to snuff, in which case anyone could probably hit him in our lineup. So that pretty much goes over the whole group. I expect at least 7 innings out of Bumgarner. And Wainwright, I think if Wainwright goes 7 or more, we probably lose this game. If Wainwright goes 5 or less, or I'll even say if Wainwright goes 6 or less, we'll have a damn good shot of winning. Because most of this game really depends on how sharp Wainwright is and how injured he might be. So yeah, that's it. I'm expecting a pretty close series. It's going to be tough. The Cardinals lineup is formidable, despite the fact that they didn't hit a lot of home runs this year. They've been starting to hit home runs in the postseason, and they've always had guys who make contact. Adams is a good hitter. Holiday has always been a good hitter. Molina's always been a good hitter. John Jay has gone up and down, but he's been a pretty good hitter this year. Peralta's been decent this year. He's never really been a great hitter overall. I don't know. They got some holes. Carpenter certainly is I think the best pure hitter in the group probably. So yeah, it's you know, we're having our offensive problems. A lot of this is going to depend also not just on Wainwright's health, but can we break out of the offensive doldrums we've been in? We cannot have the same performance that we had against the Nationals and win again. I'm convinced of this. At some point, that is going to come back and bite us in the ass, and we're going to need to transcend the usual narrative of good pitch and no hit if we're going to move beyond to the World Series. So, go Giants. Let's do it. This one certainly is less unlikely than our Nationals win, so we've already gotten past the hard part. Let's show the world that we're not afraid and have a great series, great NLCS, and move on to once again take the title in an even year as we've been prone to do. Giants. Giants power.